Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's a kitchen session, it's a rescue mission, and quite honestly I don't hold out a lot of success. But if I don't do something, I will lose this plant, and what I'm going to do may not work, so we may lose the plant anyway, which is a nuisance because I haven't had it long. And quite honestly, when I got it I did have a few worries about it, but not knowing much about this genus because I haven't had it before, being Renanthera, and this is the M. shootiana. It's got lousy roots basically, but as I said at the time I wasn't sure they were lousy roots because I didn't really know what sort of roots it should have. You're probably wondering why it's got a bit of cotton wool stuck on it. It started to grow a new root at that point, quite a long way up the stem, having dropped an awful lot of leaves, and it's about to drop another two. I might even help it in a minute. But somebody said if you get one of the cotton wool pads, which I have plenty of, I use them for cleaning leaves and various other things, so put a wet one around the root and you'll find it will go green and it will hydrate. Well, that's a partial success, I'll call that. It's not fully hydrated, but it refused to go green no matter how much water I poured on it. What I suspect is there are zero roots in the pot. Well, there are some, but they're dead basically. These are not viable roots, so I'm trying not to make too much mess here because I didn't bring my green tray in. And this bark is just staying wet because the roots are not using up the water despite having holes in the pot. So what we've got here is nothing. That's nothing. That's nothing. It's hollow. Look. It's useless. That's about the only viable root I've got. And it's not good enough, quite honestly. It's not going to do the job. Now what I propose on doing is taking these outside sheaths off, because I have an additional worry, and that confirms the worry. The stem's rotten. That's what I thought. It's no good at all. Right, so first job, cut stem above that. You can see it's just black rot. Sorry, I don't want to get it all over my hands if I can help it. So I'm coming up to there just to see what I get. Right, well what we haven't got is pink, because I had a suspicion. Right, now I'm going to take that leaf off. It should just peel easily. There we go. And there's a reason for getting these leaves off. It leaves this. Actually, if I take that leaf off, I'm highly likely to damage the base of that root. I'd rather let it, if it falls off naturally, it will crack around here, and when it comes off, that will naturally seal. Yeah? So the idea is, while I've still got enough plant left to work with, which isn't a lot, but it's better to start with that than lose the plant, if you see what I mean. At least I've got something left that's got green leaves on and one 1-inch root, which is hardly enough to actually supply that plant. So this plant's going to get extra treatment. But first job, seal that wound because there has been rot. You can see that stem's quite bad. So we'll seal that. Stop that creeping up inside. Right, and now I'm going to pause the camera because this has got rot. I'm going to spray the plant with hydrogen peroxide, but unfortunately my little sprayer at the moment has got alcohol in it for using on my hands when I went out a while back. So I'll have to change the sprayer over, so I'll be back. Okay, let's switch that over. That's just normal, well, it's actually food grade. That's all you can get nowadays, but it means it's better rather than worse. Hydrogen peroxide at 3% is what I get. I'm thinking of going up to 5%. I know others that use it with great effect and no particular damage. Now obviously when there are spores and pathogens and things, you cannot see them. we can see them there because they've gone black and affected the tissue, but that doesn't mean we can see them here. Yeah. So this is an atomizer basically. It's a very fine spray, and I can do that on the paper because I'm going to chuck it in a minute anyway. And that's all I'm doing. It's just enough to wet. Doesn't have to be soaked, but I'm doing it at the base of some of the leaves and making sure that the cane gets wet. And then this is useful. You see what's happening on the edge of that leaf? It's fizzing. That means there's something there that shouldn't be. That also means I'm going to do the plant. And keep my eye on it and see what happens. But when you get fizzing on a plant that you spray, there's something there that shouldn't be. Now sometimes it's just dirt. But I'm just going to make sure here. And then have a look. No, nothing's changed. So basically at the base of that leaf, on the edge of that leaf and that leaf, nothing higher up, and a lot at the base of the cane. Mind you, that could be that it doesn't like the cinnamon. Now in theory you don't need to rinse that because hydrogen peroxide, when doing its job, it's H2O2, and basically the one of the O's disappears basically, and it becomes H2O, which is harmless because it's water, as we all know. That's the only bit of chemistry I think I remember from school, is H2O is water. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what the H2 actually meant. I'm not really sure now, and I don't want to know. I don't need an essay. But basically this stuff fizzes when it's doing something. If it doesn't find anything to do, it doesn't fizz. But basically you don't have to worry about rinsing to any great extent, because when it's exposed to air it degrades to H2O relatively quickly, which means it should always be in an airtight container. This probably is not 3% anymore because it's down to about there, which means it's exposed to some air. Even though it's a sealed lid, it's still exposed to some air. It's better to buy it in smaller bottles, then you've got less air before it runs out. But anyway, that's what I wanted to do. So that's the plant dealt with, and it's going to go in a pot with sphagnum moss, and that's all it's going to have, damp sphagnum moss, and it's going to have it up to the base of that first leaf. So I just want to get some of the water out. I said damp, not wringing wet. And I don't want it compacted, there's no need for that. It just needs the dampness around the cane. And the idea is that that one little root that we've got, that is actually, if you look at the size of the previous roots in their thickness, is that still on camera? Enough for you to see, yeah. I'll just tip it down a bit. Oh, I forget sometimes I'm talking about stuff and it's off camera, like the sink. These are not substantial roots. This one is, and I suspect that's more like a root should be for this type of plant. It is a vandaceous plant. They don't have wispy little thin roots naturally. So the idea is that it hopefully will relatively quickly produce some more of those little babies, and then it will start hydrating itself properly and feeding itself and possibly start growing. The strange thing is it hasn't stopped growing. So the top end of the plant is still working, and we can see why the bottom end wasn't working. The rot had set in and was creeping up that rhizome, which meant all of those roots at the base of the plant couldn't possibly function, even if they were still functioning, which most of them aren't, because nothing could get up that stem. So it was just dehydrating, slowly but surely, and lack of food and everything else. So the fact that it is halfway through growing a new leaf is pretty good going, really, considering its state. Right, now I'm going to put the root on the inside so that that hopefully will grow on, and I'm going to take it down as far as those two leaves like that, simply because it will sit on the pot quite nicely, and then we'll get some moss around it As I say, I don't want it dripping wet, I just want it damp, and that will help with the humidity around the plant. It's coming out of the light. If you've got a stressed plant, take it out of the light. I don't mean stick it in a dark cupboard, but get it out of the light, because when in the appropriate light for the plant will do its best to photosynthesize, which uses energy. It also creates some, but it makes the plant do stuff, it makes it work. If you take that light away, it slows its metabolism right down, and also get it away from extreme temperatures as well, so don't get it too hot, because again that will make it, you know, the transpiration or whatever it is, the process of the fluids going up through the plant and evaporating out the leaves is exaggerated when the heat goes up. You're making the plant work. So nice averagey type temperatures, get it away from the bright light and let it sit quiet for a bit and contemplate its navel. I think this is the expression, not that the plant's got a navel. So that's all I'm going to do with that, and I'll make sure the moss stays damp, and now hopefully that single root in there will stay hydrated, which gives it a trickle. Nothing more than a trickle, because it's only one small root. So that's all it can have. There's no feed anywhere in sight at the moment. We'll worry about that later. So I'm just adding a bit of quite wet moss on the top that can just trickle down through. Make sure everything's damp in there. Right, so there we go, and we won't lose our label. It's the label that came with it, not my label obviously. And we'll see what happens, but it was either do something or it looked seriously like I was about to lose the plant, and given the state of that I can touch it now, so I'm not going to touch the plant again. If you look at this, it's just gone. This is serious mould in here, black and white. And it's just had it. You can see it's black into the stem. That's not live tissue. So nothing was capable of getting up through there from down here. Well, certainly none of this was working, because this is just dead as a doornail. But this one might have been. That's it. That's the only. This one's soggy. That's actually wet inside, so that's got some rot inside that root. Yeah, look. That's gone. So this was the only bit of the plant that was possibly functioning, but failed to function because it couldn't get up through there. So we found the problem, found what it was. Now I wonder how much of that happened after I got it, and how much of it was already there when I got it. So the trouble is, when you've got sheaths on a cane or a pseudobulb, or in this case a stem, they hide things, and they can hide things for some considerable time. So that rot on the inside of those sheaths could have been on that plant some considerable time. And I'm not having a go at the supplier, because you couldn't see it, could you? Until I started peeling. So you can't really say they sold a duff plant knowingly. Chances are it was a duff plant, but they wouldn't have known about it. And I'm not protecting the supplier, I'm just saying as it is. I've only just spotted that something was not right, but the telltale sign was the leaf fall. But that's what I saw, and then I had to look deeper to find out what the real problem was. And I still couldn't see it. It was only when I started to take those sheaths off that it became apparent. And now we know what it was. I've done what I can to deal with it. Now all I've got to do now is make sure that moss stays damp and keep my eye out for root growth in the pot. I'm not one of those who has to keep taking it out of the pot and have a look. I'll wait. If roots are going to grow, they will hit the edge of the pot eventually. There's a comment on one of my videos actually about, I think it was the video I've just done with the project orchids, and I lifted one of the pots out of its black shield pot and said, oh look, it's got a real good pot full of roots. And the comment was, yeah, around the outside. And that's how they grow. You have to bear in mind that terrestrial things like to shove their roots down. Yeah, that's their anchor, you know, at that sort of angle. They don't grow out like that. But epiphytes have got to hang on. They've got to grab hold. Their roots tend to come out almost at right angles to the base of the plant so that they can grab things, or perhaps angled slightly downwards. So they come out in a different way. And if you think about, you set your plant up roughly near the middle of the pot, or slightly over to one side to allow for new growth. And any new roots that come out from the base of the plant head away from the plant to try and grab hold of things. They don't realise they're in a pot. And what's the first thing they hit? Is the side of the pot, and then they either go round or down the outside of the pot. The chances are in the middle of the pot there's nothing. How about this for a theory then? So I have to hold that. That is an air cone pot. As you can see, it's got a recess, yeah? With lots of holes and slits and things to allow for ventilation. This one's got rather a lot more ventilation because it's had added help. What sort of pot do you think? How good do you think the pot would be if that air cone went at least halfway up the pot? In other words, it came right up to here. What would be the result of that? First of all, a lot less media in the pot because you couldn't put it in there because of the air cone, yeah? Where do all the roots go? Round the outside of the pot. In a normal pot, what's in the middle of the pot? Media and no roots. So what purpose does it serve? It's got no roots in it. They end up around the edge of the pot and coming out the bottom, yeah? So if that air cone was much, much larger, you'd save on media. You wouldn't waste that media in the middle of the pot that never gets used. And you'd have far more control on watering. It would dry quicker. You might cause extra work. But, you know, there's some entrepreneur out there, you know, you could get the marketing and actually get that off the ground. You'd have orchid buyers all over the world clamouring for it. Because once you explain the theory and show some pictures of what plants do in their plastic pots, you'd sell it. I'm not doing it, I'm too old to muck about like that, but it just dawned on me. You know, get that air cone really big. I mean, at the moment it's about a centimetre and a bit, or half an inch, old money. But what if it was 2 inches? Yeah, you might have a little bit of trouble settling your plant in because you've got no depth. But all the roots are going to end up round the edge, one way or the other, and the bit in the middle is wasted. Why not have it as an air cone and get that ventilation in round those roots? They need that air around them. They're epiphytes. So that's my theory. So some entrepreneur out there needs to take that on board, find a company that can do it and charge next to nothing, and then work out your costs, double it, and sit back and watch the money roll in. You're not going to become a millionaire selling orchid pots, trust me. But it's just an idea I've had. It's never going to happen, obviously. You could circumvent it by those little open baskets, the little round ones that you put tiny little plants in, yeah? If you put one of those upside down in your normal pot, you've just created an air cone, but what you haven't got is the opening underneath. You've still got your basic bottom to the pot, so that'll be like a halfway house. Anyway, purpose of today was to try and get that sorted out and save it. We may have done that, we may not. That's going to have trouble hydrating with that one tiny root, so as I said, I need to keep that somewhere a bit cooler, not too cold, a bit cooler, where the humidity is nice and high, out of airflow. I don't want air blowing across this plant. That'll help dehydrate the leaves, won't it, when it can't replenish the stocks. So somewhere quiet, I'll call it a quiet place, where it's not going to get bright light. There'll be good humidity there, and it won't get its leaves blasted with those two big fans in there. And we'll see where we go. Hopefully, after a month or so, we might see some results, but you're not going to get instant results on something like that. So we'll see how we do. Hopefully we've saved it. See you next time.